Welcome to Screen Junkies News, and boy, do we have some news today.
It's like we were just here,
It's
Roth.
like we were just here. We just finished filming our morning show, which if you haven't enjoyed that, please do, but we have some news. James Gunn is reportedly either in talks or set to write Suicide Squad 2 for Warner Brothers with an eye to direct. Now let's break that down for you. What do we mean by that? Well, several different outlets are reporting that they have the exclusive on this, which is something that I will address towards the end of our initial chat. But let's first talk about the news. This was first released via
The
Wrap,
shortly after Jermaine Lucier over at IO9,
and as well as
Deadline
and THR. So the different reports were the Wrap reported that he was in talks to write and possibly direct Suicide Squad 2. Deadline says that he has in fact been hired by Warner Brothers and DC to write and possibly direct Suicide Squad 2. IO9 says that they are in talks, and I believe the Wrap says they are in talks. So we have one source saying that it's done deal. He's definitely going to write the film and perhaps direct. And several other sources saying that he is certainly in heavy talks, and they've just been cleared of how he was to fully exit Guardians of the Galaxy 3 from Disney. I will tell you, when the Guardians news first came up, I made a joke that Warner Brothers should then hire James Gunn, A, because he's very talented, but B, just as like almost a stunt, a baked in stunt, and you get the talent. But what do you think? Do you think that played in it at all?
I don't know. I mean, you know, he has been largely silent, if not completely silent, since July Comic-Con weekend when everything happened with Guardians. This is certainly not leaning away from the controversy.
It is not.
Artistically, it makes sense. You have with Suicide Squad a first film that, financially did well. With many fans did well. With many fans, was not a well-loved film, and certainly not with critics. Mm-hmm. The reports that we've read, and these have been multiple, we've been reading the reports. It sounds like from what we've read, they're all reporting either with certainty or a very high degree of certainty that he is going to write it. Yeah. Directing is sort of up in the air. But you have a franchise, these reports are saying he's going to take it in a different direction, whatever that means, or he has a different take on it. They're not describing it as a sequel to Suicide Squad, just a next Suicide Squad film. So I think given his sensibilities, it makes sense.
Sure,
it shares a lot of DNA. Yeah,
a bunch of music, ragtag group, makes sense. That's via our own JT, and I think you're right. It does tonally make sense for James Gunn to direct a movie like that.
Write
and possibly direct.
The other question that came up was Gavin O'Connor. I was reading a report that said that he is engaged, currently working on another film at the studio with Ben Affleck, so he may have just shifted over to another project. Yeah. There's no official word on him. He's been attached to direct for quite a while.
Yeah.
This is really surprising to me, if I'm being honest. I would not have guessed that this would be the next step in this journey. I guess everything's insanity always and forever from now on. So I guess I shouldn't be that surprised.
Especially if it's the Suicide Squad. Yeah. It's not surprising to me. And I'll tell you why. One, because of what we just said in terms of James Gunn actually creatively being quite a good fit for this. Walter Hamada, I think, has slowly but surely been steering the ship over at Warner Brothers, DC Warner Brothers, in a very different direction, where they are focused on these seemingly, if not one-off, it looks to be like Filmmaker Vision films with their DC characters, just if we're looking at the Joker, if we're looking at some of the other films they have in development. So it doesn't surprise me that with Suicide Squad 2, they would have been in heavy talks about this over the last X number of months, and potentially be deciding to take it in a radically different direction, a direction that maybe now Gavin O'Connor isn't a good fit for. I really like Gavin O'Connor as a director, by the way, but if he's now shifted to doing another film for Warner Brothers, that's another indication that James Gunn really might be set to direct this film and kind of infuse some of his sensibilities to it. And it would be interesting to see Gunn, who has been traditionally a horror director, a little bit of a darker director, now be given free reign. He paired that way back with Guardians, which has so much heart and is so beautiful. To marry those two pieces of himself together artistically in one film, that's pretty interesting.
I mean, artistically, I agree. That's if James Gunn and Disney had split due to creative differences, this would be the most natural move in the world, and it wouldn't surprise me a bit. I think what surprises me is that He's got another horror movie that I think got pushed to next year that he's producing that, I'm certain he may have some degree of visibility for. But this will be his first major project. And I guess the surprise for me is the split with Disney was very controversial.
Yeah.
It was very public. It was very ugly.
Yeah.
There were a lot of feelings on pro and con for it. And I guess the surprise for me is that Warner Brothers is taking on a lot by signing him to this, in the sense that this is he would already be under a high degree of scrutiny, especially if he's going to direct. This is a very outward-facing public thing, and it surprises me a little bit that Warner Brothers signed on, but not really, because if they believe in his artistic vision, I guess it surprises me a little more that he would be ready to jump almost out of the gate right back into the spotlight.
I think that for Warner Brothers, and I'm sure they had a lot of different think tanks on this and mini focus groups and research and stuff, but I think for Warner Brothers, the controversy probably only adds fuel to this hire, because they know they're going to get a lot of attention on it.
Yeah.
They know that they're going to get a curiosity factor from the people that are paying attention, which the lion's share of the audience isn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's hardcore kind of film nerds like us are paying attention. But Suicide Squad in particular, with Disney, and we've talked about this, Disney has a very, very family-friendly brand. And when we say that, whatever you think about Disney in terms of their values and so forth, their brand is that anybody, the whole family, can watch it together, right? That is what the Disney brand is and always has been. So the controversy around James Gunn was particularly troubling for them. You talk about something like Suicide Squad 2, and I wouldn't be surprised if they play into the idea of that is an adult movie, potentially an R movie. They don't, that this is are they playing up the rivalry between Marvel and DC? I'm not sure. It's a little unclear. It's going to get played up.
Yeah.
But are they the rebels? Do they have a baked-in story by hiring James Gunn that represents what they would like you to feel and think about the Suicide Squad?
Well, it's
they're
kind of
anti-heroes.
It's the rebellious move.
They're rebellious.
It's we're going to do the thing that nobody thought that we would do. It's the audacious move.
These aren't the heroes. These aren't the good guys.
I do think, there's now this, of course, let the speculation begin about what this movie is going to be.
Begin.
All we've heard is that he's going to take it in a different direction.
Does that mean reboot?
If I were to say, I would say no, because I think that you have a really very talented cast.
Especially you're not getting rid of
Margot Robbie
and Will Smith.
She could maybe they just spin off Harley into her own movies, but I'm guessing the way that contracts work, that entire cast is contractually obligated to come back for a sequel should they decide to make one. I would not throw that cast away. I think the cast was not even one of the problems about Suicide Squad for me personally as a viewer. There was no casting decision in that film that I was like, I don't.
There
really
was
like that.
One, but she's not coming back anyway.
There was one for me. There was one for, I guess, there was one for me too, but it was one that I already assumed would not be coming back. That shouldn't have been in that movie to begin with.
But that's okay. She's not coming back anyway, and the people we like probably are.
But I would not completely start over. I think that you've got a great core group of people. Even to Jai Courtney, as much guff as we've given him on this channel. Guff, what am I, 80?
Yeah.
But I thought that he was good in that role. Margot Robbie, Will Smith. I think if you use Joel Kinnaman as anything other than an exposition machine, he could be a really strong piece of that puzzle. So that'll be the next step. Is where does he take this group? But I think he's got good building blocks.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if they threw everything out and started over.
I would too. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he focuses heavily on the two that we mentioned as to me that were the standouts, which were Will Smith and Margot Robbie.
Maybe they should go to space.
Maybe they should go to space. I don't know. But he'll probably center around them and spend some time on the characters. He'll probably define and decide really who and what the leadership structure is in the group. He's really good at this. He's done a great job with Guardians, bringing it to the screen. That said, I think we have to address, I believe that Warner Brothers PR feels that they can spin this in a way that works for them, considering what the movie is and considering what it represents about the movie in Suicide Squad 2. But do you think there are some people that will sort of take umbrage with this and say, how are you hiring this guy?
Of course there are. I mean, there was a massive group of people, or at least a very vocal group of people, who were very, very behind what Disney did. The question being, was that confined to that one instance because of the circumstances surrounding it, or is there going to be a continued and sustained vocal opposition to James Gunn? I think Disney itself represents a lot of things inside and outside of Hollywood that I don't know if the porting over to Warner Brothers would necessarily make as big of an impact. Meaning, protesting against Disney makes a lot of headlines and a lot of ink. They are the monolith. They are, in a lot of ways, the symbol of big Hollywood. I don't know if making that same amount of uproar around this film at Warner Brothers would draw that much attention. So I think that there is always going to be a sustained and vocal opposition to James Gunn. I don't know if it's going to be at the scale that you saw when it initially happened last summer.
And I also think if there is any amount of protest around it, it's probably not the type, like they're probably banking on it's not your audience anyway for that particular film, and that the people protesting aren't necessarily going to go, and we're also going to protest it too, and make those connections versus Disney. You're right, because it's a monolith. You know that there's a lot to protest in Disney, and you connect those dots, I think, a little more than you do with what movies other studios are releasing, you know? Fascinating. Any final thoughts, Dan? We're going to keep up with this as it unfolds.
I mean, this is a huge get for Warner Brothers. This is a coup for them. This was certainly not a talent that I think they ever thought that they would have access to. I think this does speak a little bit about James Gunn's relationship with Disney. Obviously.
It was a bad breakup.
But at the same time, they were the ones that made him available to take this job. And I think we've talked about the landscape of the DC films post-Justice League. Yeah. We're going to get Aquaman and Wonder Woman 2, and wondered where the direction is going to be. And this is obviously a big flag planted in the ground for them to say, we're not going away, and we're not going to step back. We're not going to cede ground. We are going to go after the people that we think, and we don't care what comes attached with that. Like, we are committed to making this work. So this is a big statement for Warner Brothers, and a pretty big statement, I think, from James Gunn as far as, you know what, if you're going to hire me, and if I feel like I have a good take on the project, then great, let's do it.
Well, sure, he's not going to turn an opportunity like this down for any number of reasons, but I think you're right. It's sort of like they broke up, and then I don't know if it's worse to go date the best friend or the worst enemy, but if you could do both at the same time and the brother, that's what he did. Yeah. You know, a little bit on James Gunn's part, but I also totally understand the decision on Warner Brothers' parts and his to take it, and his team. It's certainly getting us talking about it and the attention on Suicide Squad 2, and I don't think that will change over the next period of time as we work towards release.
Do you think he closes the deal to direct?
I think it depends. From the pieces that we're starting to put together in terms of Walter Hamada, and what I perceive to be his vision for DC, which I super am excited. I'm very excited about that vision because it feels like let's just scrap the whole idea of chasing Marvel. Let's scrap the whole idea.
Going crazy.
Let's go nuts and make really interesting films and see what happens. And I could not be more behind that idea. And they're making very interesting, smart choices. Long story endless. Yeah. I also did want to, I know I said that I would come back to the idea of all of these different outlets all having exclusives.
Oh, yeah.
If you're curious about that at all, very quickly, none of them are going to credit the other, is what's happening right now. The first one that released it, all that does is alert every other sort of trade that they have to go to their source now and get a confirmation on their own. And now that they've gone to their source and they've gotten a confirmation on their own, they can call it their exclusive, because technically it is. They are not... like us, we have to source where we're getting this from, because I didn't talk to anybody at Warner Brothers. But if I did, now that's my exclusive. So in the future, Warner Brothers, if you want another mouthpiece, I'm right here for you. Get it. Slide right into
Cornet is on your call sheet.
Slide right into my DMs. You know, like, I don't know who is more important than ScreenJunkies News.
I can't think of anyone else, literally, who should be the number one call when you have news in this business.
You're making.
We can be on the air in 30 to 2 hours,
minutes,
depending on our staff.
Maybe we're at lunch. We don't know. But next time, Warner Brothers, you just think about who you're calling first. But that's sort of what that's all about.
But we did wait. To be honest, we did wait.
Yeah.
It's kind of an insight into what we do. Because we are not equipped with a full newsroom. So when we saw the first source
we're
for
this,
newsroom. Yeah, we're the newsroom. So when we saw the first source for this story, this is not to do with the news. This is just kind of how we work. But we decided to wait 10, 15 minutes because we knew that if this were more than just a hot scoop that somebody got, that it would start to roll down.
Exactly.
And that's when we saw, first you get the deadline, then you get IO9.
You get IO9 in the mix. If IO9's on your call list, well, Jermaine, we love him, so that's
Jermaine's
great. Awesome. Yeah, exactly. That because we know that once the other trades start to report it, it means that the sources, they're actually going to their sources, and there's multiple people
and they're
from
citing
the
studio sources confirming. Yes.
And there's multiple people from the studios confirming it, and that's just a little bit on that. And Warner Brothers, though, I do think is starting to button up their messaging, because even though there's multiple sources, they're all saying the same thing.
And they obviously coordinated this in the sense that, this has obviously been under wraps in the works for a while, and you can tell just from the pattern that they seem to have kind of strategically decided who and when
it's
and
going to get released
to get this information out there. So they might be, you're right, they might be buttoning it up just a little bit.
Button it up. And here's my final thought on that, circling it back to will he nail down the directing. But this, I believe what we are doing right now is a little bit of focus grouping for them.
Probably.
They have hired him to write the film, and they are currently focus grouping the audience by seeing what people write and say about it, and how people respond on Twitter. They'll probably track all of that and decide if they should close the deal to direct to.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
We'll see.
You guys let us know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited or are you not? Do you think it's crazy? Do you think it's awesome? I don't know. Let us know, and we will be back as soon as more big Hollywood news breaks for us.
Yeah. Is anything broken while we're on the air?
Yeah.
That's how.
That could be today, or
Okay,
it could
good.
be 2 months from now. We'll let you know.